MK, these videos on audiobooks are great, but I don't want to be an author. I just want to be an audiobook narrator. How do I do that? All right, that's a question I've actually got several times on this channel. And to be honest, I have no clue how to narrate other people's books. I've done my own and they've lived up to my personal quality, but I wouldn't say that I'm at the quality where I would record for others. So I had to call in some reinforcements to answer this question, and that is going to be the focus of today's interview. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm MK Williams. I'm an author and independent publisher. I love sharing all things about self-publishing, being a career author, and now being a mompreneur with you. Before we dive into today's interview, don't forget to take a moment to click like and subscribe. That way you can be here every week as I release new videos on this topic. Today, I'm actually going to be interviewing a good friend of mine, Lisa Negron, who is an amazing narrator, and we're just going to dive right into the interview right now. Hello, and welcome to the first Author Your Ambition interview. I'm so pleased to bring you today's guest. In her own words, Lisa Negron is an award-winning stage actress with over 30 years of acting, singing, improv, and storytelling experience. As a narrator with her own professional studio, Lisa's audiobooks range from nonfiction and memoir to sci-fi fantasy to Christian romance. She is a co-founder of The Through Line, a theatrical production company, a Florida-based professional non-equity theater. Lisa's voice gives stories life and brings warmth to words. However, I have to say that she's left out a little bit from her bio, and it'd be kind of weird if she put this in, so I'm going to toot her horn for her. She is just the embodiment of talent and humility. Lisa could easily brag all day long about her accolades, her talent, and forget us little folks that she's met along the way, but she is just such a commensurate professional and one of the kindest people I have ever worked with and just known personally. She's curious, she's courageous, and she's super fun to chat with. So without further delay, here's one of the best people I've ever had the honor of knowing, Lisa Negron.
Am I the color of my shirt now? Oh, that was so sweet. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, it's all true.
Aw.
I've met so many people in this industry now, and they're all great. They're all professional, but you're just one of my favorite for so many reasons. So I'm so glad that we can talk today.
Aw.
And as I was telling you before we jumped in with the introductions, this channel really focuses on self-publishing and people who are just wading into those waters. And my niche video topics include barcodes and ISBNs and the publishing platforms. And of the few videos I've done on audiobooks, I always get people who ask, how do I narrate other people's books? I've done the video on what it was like when I experimented for the sake of the channel of recording my own audiobook. Quick summary, it was painful but fun, and yeah. So people ask me what they can do to narrate other people's books, and I don't know about that, but you are an expert. And so I really want to start with the genesis of your career as an audiobook narrator. And if you could just dive in and start to tell the audience a bit about your background prior to starting this phase of your career, what inspired you to start this new career for yourself, and go from there.
Wow. Okay. All right. So just to start, I come from a theater background, and I started performing. Oh my gosh! From the time that I could walk onto a stage, I started doing children's theater and performing and that kind of thing. And then I started working with theater companies before I even graduated high school, professional theater companies. And then from there, I went into college and I focused my degree on a bachelor. So University of Tampa is really, really great. They're leaps and bounds even better than they were when I graduated a really long time ago. But they were really, really, really great when I was there. And my degree is in performing arts with an emphasis in musical theater with training in directing. And so, and those are skills that you definitely take with you into the booth. Before I even graduated college, my internship, I actually got to be a performer at a theme park. We are in Central Florida, of course. And they had a partnership at the time with Busch Gardens Tampa. And so my senior year, I got to perform. It was acting and improv, actually, at the time. And they needed people with improv experience. And I did have improv experience. And then from there, I went on to work with most of the theme parks in the Central Florida area. If you're an actor in Florida and you're not taking advantage of the fact that we have theme parks for you to perform with, you need to get on it. But we also have a lot of great theater companies too.
Mm-hmm.
So in between theme park jobs, I was also touring with theater companies. I was working with theater companies, or during the day, I'd be at the theme parks. At night, I'd be performing with theater companies. And I did this for 20 years almost. And it's, you get to a certain age and you're like, okay, this is really getting a little exhausting because I was performing 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd moved up in the ranks. I was performing, but I was also doing, musical directing, and I was actually able to write some of my own shows and that kind of thing. And it was funny because you started working on your very first book, and and Omar, my wonderful husband at the time, who was my biggest champion, my biggest supporter, he had been gathering a recording equipment because, well, I thought it was just for music because we're also singer-songwriters
Mm-hmm.
and we were wanting to get our stuff onto CDs. And he said, this equipment will work for voiceovers. And at the time, I had done some voiceover announcements for the theme parks that I'd worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, that's something to think about. So I looked into like the world of voiceovers and that kind of thing. And then one night after I think you had sent us. I can't remember if your book had officially come out yet or not, but had it come out already or
I
something?
think I think I probably was. I think you probably got one of the previews. So just as a heads up for everybody
Yeah.
watching, so Lisa and I know each other through my husband's parents' church. So we were good friends at this point, outside of the realm of books. I mean, we obviously talked books whenever we could, other than
We're
other
book
than the good
nerds.
book. We talked
We're
about
book
other books.
nerds. Yeah, we're book nerds. Total
Yeah.
book nerds. Yeah.
So we would just talk books. And so
Yeah.
Lisa and Omar have been so supportive of my journey as an independent author. They knew me when I was still talking big game about all my dreams of being an author, and things like that. So they were so supportive along the way. So they were some of the first people that I said, hey, would you like to read my first book? Which is Nail Biters, which I loved your reaction to,
Yeah.
Lisa.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna tell you guys right now. I'm a total like I get into the books that I read so much to the point where I will dream about them. And MK's first book gave me nightmares. And that is a true compliment to the way that she writes. Because
That's how I took it.
I can't read like a lot of like the Stephen King stuff. And it's so funny because I've narrated some of that kind of stuff now, like thrillers and stuff. But like, what doesn't I will have nightmares. But so anyway, so that book came out, and then you were okay. I'm trying to remember this because then your second book,
Was the collection of
the
stories.
games
Yeah.
you cannot win,
Hmm.
and Omar had been. I swear, my husband, if he gets something in his mind, he loves to research it. And
Hmm.
so then he started researching audiobooks. We're both huge book nerds. And
Hmm.
he said, we have this equipment. He's like, I've been studying how to build studios for music. However, he's like, maybe if I built you a studio for narrating books, because it's completely different than a music studio.
Hmm.
We'll talk about that later. He said, you should maybe ask MK if she'd ever want a narrator for one of her audiobooks. Swear to God, never thought you'd actually take me up on it. I remember jokingly saying, LOL, do you ever want me to narrate one of your audiobooks? Let me know. And you just jumped on it. And I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? I was just like,
Well, and
all right.
I think that's something where the stars were aligning because I had
Mm-hmm.
been thinking I want to do audiobooks. Like there was people were asking, as I'm listening to industry podcasts, they're saying people on audiobooks.
Yeah.
And I looked at the costs for narrators or for doing it yourself. And I was like, I can't, I'm still trying to earn back what I paid for the cover art for my first book. Like there's no
Yeah.
way I can invest in this, just in good
Yeah.
conscience. And so this person that I know who has an amazing voice is a professional actor is like, can I narrate your audiobook and it'll just be my first foray into it? Would you let me do that? And I'm like, would I let you?
I
Yes.
know. Well, and I am going to preface this by saying you don't know what you don't know. And they say ignorance is bliss, but sometimes ignorance can really can really kick you upside the head because we set everything up. We got the equipment and everything. It's I have to laugh when people are like, "Oh, well you're just sitting in a booth reading a book." No, you're not. Oh dear God. So to give someone a little bit of perspective, so say an audiobook is 8 hours long.
Hmm.
The narrator themselves, it is usually a 6-to-1 ratio. And that's once you've gotten your footing and you know what you're doing. there's a 6-to-1 ratio, and those 6 hours for equaling one. So an 8-hour audiobook took the narrator 48 hours essentially of work.
Hmm.
You are reading the book. Yes, you read the book beforehand. Oh my God. People, read the book beforehand. To put it in a little bit of perspective, say you're reading a mystery novel and the person that ends up being the villain calls somebody on the phone, and you have to have the voice that matches the person that you find out who you were talking to at the end of the book, just to give you a little perspective, people. Read the book beforehand. Read the book. Okay, so coming back. So you read the book. You make I live and die by a grid. I make a grid of the characters as I come across them. You make a note of any character descriptions that the author has put in there. Based on their age, where they come from, if they say anything about the tone of their voice, the tonal quality, the pacing at which they speak, that kind of thing. You put all of this in a grid, and then I also put what chapters they appear in, so that when I go in
Mm.
to record those chapters for the day, I know who I'm dealing with that day, what character I have to be in my head, and so there's that. You also are looking up any words that you may never have said out loud before. It's funny. There's a lot of words that you read that you never realize that you've never said out loud. And you're like, "Oh, that's how you pronounce it." And so okay, so you're prepping that, and I have all these different highlighter colors on my tablet when I'm prepping a manuscript. So like blue is like pronunciation, pink is like character indicators, orange is like sections for breaks, all this kind of stuff. So you're reading the story, you're prepping the story. When all is said and done, you will have read that story to yourself at least twice.
Hmm.
Um, at least twice. And then you get in the studio and you start working on it, you start recording it. So, and once you're recording, part of that 6 hours is it usually takes you 2 hours to record 1 hour of audio. You should
Hmm.
have a 2-to-1 ratio. And that's because you have to remember, people, you have to swallow, you have to breathe, you have to take water. You're not just going to read it straight through. You can't, and you trip on your own tongue, and you trip,
Hmm.
and there's times where you have to take like this massive breath and you have to stop recording yourself. So yeah, so there's a lot that goes into it. So going back to that, I learned doing MK's book because I knew that it was going to be like audiobook boot camp for me. That I didn't know what I didn't know, and it ended up being a marathon. It is physically exhausting to narrate an audiobook. But you build up your stamina for it, but in the beginning, whew, it's rough. It's very,
Mm.
very rough. So yeah, then we got started and didn't know if, if it was going to lead to anything, and it did. It led
It
to
did.
something, thank
Yeah.
God. It led to something, thank God. But
Yeah.
oh man, that's
Yeah.
how it got started. Wow,
Yeah.
that was a segue. Squirrel, I am so
No,
sorry.
that's the kind of detail that people definitely want to know. And so it's so interesting to hear that even you're saying somebody who had, like you said, decades of experience performing, like using
Mhm.
your voice all day, every day, singing, acting, announcing, doing those things. And then you're getting into the recording studio and it was different. It was a different kind of voice work. So one question that I have, obviously you are a vocal professional and you've been for years. So
Mhm.
I just remember all the times you would say, nope, I can't have that. That could hurt my voice or that could dehydrate me or things like that. What are some things that you started to do to learn how to narrate audiobooks after that first marathon
Oh my
trial with
gosh.
which by the way sounds amazing and you can get where you get audiobooks. But what were the things that you had to learn at that point for your voice that somebody brand new to audiobook narration would need to know?
It's funny because you don't realize, for example, if you are a stage performer, you take as big of breaths as you possibly can to fill the space. Okay, so I actually stand closer to my microphone than this, because I'm sitting right now. When I'm recording in the booth, I'm actually standing closer to my microphone than I'm sitting. I'm
Mhm.
sitting right now. I'm probably about 14 inches. I know, look, because the microphone is here. We're at an angle, so I'm actually 14 inches from a microphone right now. Studios want you to be between 6 and 9,
Super
depending
close.
on the volume of your voice, and you always want it up, and you don't talk directly into it. It
Oh,
it depends on the person. But when you're starting out, the best piece of advice I ever got from a vocal coach for audiobooks, and that's something we need to dive into. Those are crucial. You want it, you want to line it up with your nose and then go just in front of your eye, so
okay.
that it's not picking up the fullness of the breaths. And there's a reason why we have this wonderful pop filter too. So one of the things you realize is that when you are performing audiobooks, you have to learn how to breathe quieter. You want to breathe. There is this whole thing, and there's a huge argument that happens sometimes with beginners, and it's still something that I know, MK, you're part of the narrator pages. You
Yes.
see that people talk about, oh, we need to take out breaths. No, because if you take out breaths, there is something that actually happens to a listener, and they can't put their finger quite on it. But when you take
Mm,
out the breath, you make the experience sound less human.
mhm,
And I am guilty of that in the beginning. I tried to either hold my breath, which was a big no no. And the more that once I started doing it, you start paying attention to little things that you subconsciously didn't realize were there.
mhm,
And so, like, you start listening to the breaths and, like, no, they're breathing like you naturally would in a conversation. We take breaths, but
mhm,
we have to take quieter breaths. We're not trying to fill up a space. We're not projecting. We're not, so that's another thing. You have to, and it's great that you're not projecting because that way, if you're recording for hours at a time, you can't,
yeah.
you'd kill yourself. Not only that, you'd blow out your microphone, you'd blow out your speakers, and you don't want that. So as a performer, yeah, you're learning different muscles, different ways of performing, and that's why vocal coaches for audiobooks are so crucial. And
Yeah.
not only that, you're doing different. If you're doing fiction, I do fiction and nonfiction, but when you're doing fiction, you have to do guy voices, you have to do alien voices, you have to do dragon voices, and I run the gamut, and you have to make sure that you do it in such a way that you're not hurting yourself.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're just, on stage for a 25-minute theme park show or a 2-hour stage show, unless you're doing a one-person show, you're not talking the entire time. So you don't realize what can be taxing on your voice until you get up here and you're so close to this microphone and you are listening to every little thing that you're doing and you're like, "Oh, I can't do that long term. That'll hurt myself. I got to learn how to do this." So when I
Mhm.
first started, I would lose my voice. And I'm like, "Okay, no, no, no. No, no, this is not acceptable because my normal vocal warm-ups weren't cutting it. I had to learn different muscles to use, and it takes practice and it takes coaching. So yeah, so it's little things like that, and you learn where to stand, how to hold your voice in such a way that you don't fatigue your body, and you have to keep your stamina up. Yes, we're
Mhm.
we're sitting or standing in a booth all day long, but cardio is a lifesaver.
Overall, everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that.
yeah,
Okay, so so many awesome tips. I have so many things I want to go back to and ask you questions
yeah,
on, but okay.
yeah.
So following your journey, so you narrated this first audiobook for
Hmm.
me. You did a great job. And just as a disclaimer, so when Lisa made this offer to me, she said, I have no experience doing this. So I want to do this for free. And I said, sounds like a great deal. So I will say, and there are a lot of people out there that say, internships, things like that should be paid. And granted, Lisa did such an amazing job. But she has since turned this into an empire, is spoiler alert.
Okay.
So she has done a lot of great work, and this was a great testing ground for her. So I kind of want to dive into, you did this first audiobook with me. What was the second book you got, and how did you start to then market yourself and get more jobs, and what were the first jobs you were getting as a narrator compared to what you're getting now? How did you start to position yourself to get more books to do for compensation to make this your full-time job?
Okay, so if you are interested in audiobooks, your main in 9 times out of 10 will be ACX,
Mhm.
Audible Creation Exchange. It is the one place where you can make your own profile and put yourself on and look for work without having to apply to be on a roster. And once I did your book, I then took clips of audio because okay, first things first. If you are a narrator wanting to get on ACX, the first thing you do is you read all of their blog posts, you watch their videos so that you know what is required of you. You're going to you're not just jumping in recording stuff on your cell phone, and I hear those samples and they're not good. I mean, I don't care how good of an actor you are if it doesn't sound, if it's not good sound quality, you're not going to get the work because
Mhm.
when you're starting out, you are in your studio. And because of COVID, when I record for big publishers now, I'm not, I'm not flying out to like their studios in LA or New York. I am the reason I installed the Zoom camera is so I could do a book for Penguin Random House. They were going to be directing me in studio, in my own home studio, and so we're zooming in now. So you have to have your own setup. You have to, if you're gonna get the work,
Mm-hmm.
you are gonna have to invest, and it's like anything else. It's like investing in college, investing in your future.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay the money to pay for a good studio, to pay for the equipment. So if you're starting out, watch the ACX videos, the blogs. Take in as much information as you possibly can before you just throw yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I took a snippet of MK's book based on what you had to do in order to put up a sample. I put it up there. I created a profile. I had a headshot, my description, that kind of thing. And within a couple of days, I had some offers for books. Even when you're starting out, you got to be choosy. There were books that I was like, ooh, no, 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 because you have to look at it as a business,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they are what's considered royalty share, and
Mm-hmm.
you're sharing the profits with the publisher. You're not getting paid outright. The first offers you almost always get starting out, for the most part, are
Mm-hmm.
royalty share offers, and there were some books that I was like, ooh, no. So then I started on, because you have
What, so
access.
why, so what made you say no? Was it the content? Was it the potential for income? What made you say
It
no?
First of all, the books were really really short,
Okay.
and you have to look at Audible in that people, for the most part, they're not they're not usually buying the books. They're using their membership
Mm-hmm.
credits,
Mm-hmm.
and you get a credit a month. And the rule of thumb in the industry, for the most part, is that unless it's something that people are like, oh my god, I have to have that, people aren't spending a credit on books that are under 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just not, or 2.5 hours or less. um Now, I will say this: I have done books that are that short, but they were part of a series,
Mm-hmm.
and I was getting paid outright for them. And so it was part of a series. And so in series, you have like the shorter novellas
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. So yeah, so have I done shorter books? Yes, I have, because it was part of a series, but I got paid by the publisher as a series.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so there was that, and then you start looking at the auditions, and the auditions are laid out in such a way that if you go to ACX, it shows you how long they are, what the average pay is going to be. Sometimes it'll say outright royalty share. Sometimes it'll say between 100 to 200 hours per finished hour. So in other words, if it's an 8-hour audiobook and it's $100 per hour, that's $800 that you make. I auditioned for 2 books on one day, and you audition like it is your job. You need to be auditioning. Now there's not always auditions for you to do every day. So that you have to take that into account. But when you find those auditions, you do them. So I auditioned for a YA fantasy novel. It was a mermaid book, and that one was a paid outright book. And then I auditioned for a royalty share. I got offered those 2 books, and so this was, let's see, I entered ACX, I want to say September of 2017. So by the time December of 2017 rolled around, I had those 2 books under my belt. And then something really interesting happened. This publisher of this tiny imprint um, found me, and they specialize in self-help nonfiction, and it was all going to be paid outright. So okay, so that started happening. I started building my portfolio, In the meantime, I knew, just from reading the blogs and the videos, that in order to get your studio just right. And when you're starting out, you go with the cheapest options, but you
Mm-hmm.
still want them to sound good. But you know that you eventually are going to upgrade, upgrade, upgrade. The studio that I'm sitting in now was something that I had saved up for, and we built last year finally. And I've got my great equipment and stuff like that. So once I got my footing, and I felt like I kind of sort of knew what I was doing, then I felt comfortable enough to start submitting my demos to production houses that required you to apply to be on their
Mm-hmm.
roster. The very first one was Findaway Voices, and this is when Findaway Voices was actually just starting out with having narrators on their roster, that they were going to set it up. And I was actually one of the first people in. And I actually got in before, um, it was pre-setting up a narrator page. It was one of those where they kept your information on file, kind of like an old school talent agency. They kept your demos on file, they kept your information, and they sent it out where you couldn't really upload or see anything yourself on your own narrator page. And I signed up with them, and then in March of 2018, this, like I said, this started snowballing. They got me my very first sci-fi book, and I actually got with them 2 books in 1 week. I got my first sci-fi book, and I got a nonfiction self-help book, and it just kind of went off from there. And the sci-fi book was part of a series that I knew that eventually I'd be doing more books, but it's a slow series. I'm doing, and the author's kind of taking it slow. He's in Australia, and then I did that book, and so I'm still kind of in the middle of that series, and then I did my self-help book, and then once you build your portfolio, and if you work with coaches and you work with, like, I worked with a coach, I, so I think you need to work with at least 3 types of coaches, if not more. The first coach I worked with was setting up my studio. There is a wonderful um, man by the name of Don Barnes. He lives out in California. And because of technology, you work with these coaches via Zoom.
Mhm.
I paid for his package of sessions, and he works with you one on one, teaching you the ins and outs of your software, teaching you the ins and outs of your studio, your audio levels, what what needs to be expected of you, that kind of thing, what you need to do. He
Mhm.
listens to your samples. He's like, okay, we need to raise the gain here. We need to do this. He teaches you the shortcuts. He teaches you all this wonderful stuff. That was my first coach. Then I met with I can't remember which came first. I met with there's what's called business coaches in audiobook world, and there's a couple of great ones. I had a session with Jeffrey Kafer. He's a brilliant audiobook narrator, but he is such a wealth of knowledge. He has been doing this for a really long time, and and he will tell you like it is, and he's very straightforward, and I love that. I don't want anybody to coddle me. I want someone to tell me exactly how it's going to be.
Mhm.
And so I worked with him, and his sessions are interesting because you pay for by the hour, and you tell him what you want to talk about. And
Mm.
so I asked him about setting up an elevator pitch, on how to approach publishers, um, what are different ways that you can meet indie authors, that kind of thing, and
Mhm.
also asking about how to prepare for my first audiobook convention.
Mhm.
If you are a narrator, and sadly because of COVID, this will be our second year that we haven't had it live in person. There's this huge thing called APAC, and it's the Audio Publishers Association conference. It's in New York. If you are a narrator, become a member. Spend the money to become a member of the
Mhm.
APA. It will only help you. The workshops you get to do are crucial. You sign up for different for opportunities to possibly get yourself in front of producers and audition, that kind of thing. So that was my second one. My third one, then I started working with. I wanted to find a good talent coach, and so because you don't know what you don't know,
Mhm.
and there is there's several. There are so many, and there are some that specialize in nonfiction. There's some that specialize in fiction. Um, I was I was privileged enough that the leading coach on nonfiction, Sean Allen Pratt, his name is we call him the Ginger Yoda. He's amazing. He has done thousands of audiobooks. He was coming to Orlando, and I'm in Central Florida, so I drove,
Yep.
and to Orlando to do a nonfiction workshop, and I jumped on it and I went, and I was a nervous wreck. It was my first time reading in public. It's one thing to do it in your studio, and it's one
Mhm.
thing to act a part, but to actually read a nonfiction's very hard. It's hard to do it without sounding like you are bored or going to bore somebody. You have to, because you have to realize you have to put some personality into it. And so I read it, and I will totally admit this. My first reading in front of a group bombed. Here I was, years of theater performing, years, and I bombed. So much so that one of the other narrators pulled me aside and said, "You might want to sign up for more sessions with Sean." before you pursue this as a career. And I felt about this big. And it just go it's a completely different animal when you get out of
Mm-hmm.
your booth. And, it's oh God, okay. I'm like, oh crap. So I felt really bad.
Aw.
And then I met with another coach for fiction who was based out of New York. And she was great. And then after my sessions with her, she's like, you're on the right track. And I was like, oh thank God. I was like, oh thank God, I needed that reassurance after
Yeah.
my bombing in public. So get the training. And I to this day, I mean, I'm now 4 years in,
Mm-hmm.
and I am, I've worked with some major publishers now, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just signed on to do I'm working on my 43rd
Okay.
audiobook. And those are professional ones. I actually have done some for practice. I recommend you do some for practice that won't ever go anywhere if you've recorded your own. I've actually
Yeah.
recorded for my own probably like 70 audiobooks total, because you want to listen
Okay.
to yourself play back, because I wanted to play with the editing, play with my recording, that kind of thing. You want to give
Yeah.
yourself testers. You don't want Yes, your job is a training ground. You will get better, but I don't recommend that you see it as that. That you see it
Mm-hmm.
as, this is my job. I'm going to learn as I go. No.
Yeah.
Give yourself time. Find those, even if it's shorter books that, in different genres. I did shorter books in nonfiction for myself. I did, fictions for myself. So I've probably, so I've got, in my brain, I have like 70 something books under my belt. But on my Audible pages, I only have, I'm going to have, 45 soon. And so yeah, so I'm doing this 4 years, and I'm still taking workshops and master classes, because you should never ever think of yourself as, okay, I've made it, I'm good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and all of us have been talking about this, there are going to be, just like any actor's career, because we're actors, there's no guarantee that your next job is going to find you.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have droughts. And so in those droughts, it's either feast or famine. You're either being thrown, oh my gosh, my schedule's so busy, I can't, blah 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 blah. And then you have those moments where you're twiddling your thumbs. And I actually recently had a 3 month drought that
Mm.
ended for me in January. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
It was my longest drought. It was actually my first drought in audiobooks, which I consider it a huge blessing that was my first drought. It took me, it took, almost 3 years for me to have my first drought, and that was terrifying. And I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do. And, because you don't have money coming in. Now, I had done enough royalty share books that I still get my monthly check, but it's not enough to live off of.
Hmm.
The royalties are not that, they're
Yeah.
not that big, if that's all your income is coming from. And a wonderful, wonderful mentor of mine, she's constantly reminding me that when you have a drought, you're about to level up in your career. And it all depends on how you treat that drought. And so during the drought, I paid for a master class with, because of one of the beauties of COVID is that there's all these major studios now offering their master classes via Zoom.
Yeah.
And so I signed up to do a workshop with the Talk Shop in New York City. I signed up to do a master class with Dion Studios in LA. And from that master class, this reading went a lot better. I did a reading because I put myself out there. I got to be one of the first people to sign up. And so I was able to get a slot to
Mm-hmm.
read. I did the reading, and the casting director for Dion Audio was there. Now, Dion is a production house that works with the major publishers. From that, I started getting auditions for big publishing houses. And with anything, you don't get everything you audition for. I got sent, after that masterclass in succession, I got sent 3 auditions. From those 3 auditions, I got one book, and it was Penguin Random House.
Just
And
big.
it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge because when you want to work with the big publishers, and so that got me my in. I had done a book for Harper Audio
Mm-hmm.
last year that I got through Findaway Voices. So this was another step in that door. And so yeah, so it all depends on how you treat your droughts.
Yeah.
If you see it as an opportunity, oh well, I have a vacation now, I'm just gonna, you know, do whatever I want to do. I'm gonna, I'll find no. Hone your craft when you have these droughts. I was still auditioning every day, but even it's no guarantee. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
as an actor, you will hear no more no's than you will yeses.
Mm-hmm.
You will.
Yeah.
Now there are exceptions. There are those people that just nail it and get it every time, and there are some people that just are amazing, and that's their path. But for the most part, you're gonna hear more no's than you do yeses.
Yeah.
And so, was I still auditioning like crazy? Yes. During that drought, I auditioned for so many books. But the cool thing about audiobooks is that when you audition, it's not like theater where you audition and then, you never see that performance again. When you audition, if it's an audition that you are proud of, guess what? That goes into your demo reel. You can put it in your
Mm-hmm.
demo reel and you can post it as a sample. And I highly recommend that when you have those droughts, also, you audition for genres that you never would see yourself working in. Because it's funny, because they always say that your niche in audiobooks will find you. You can't go in there with the attitude of, oh, I'm only going to do, I'm going to do YA books. That's what I want to do. Or I'm going to do sci-fi. Or I'm going to do, you know, I started out not really knowing I knew what books I liked.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I love YA books. I have narrated one or two. I've narrated two
Yeah.
YA books. That's it. Sci-fi and nonfiction have become my niche.
There you
It
go.
wasn't something that I ever in a million years thought I'd be narrating, but I do. And I just sci-fi and thriller kind of sort of have the same kind of
Yeah.
narration style. So the book I just did for Penguin Random House um, is a thriller, and so but I started getting
Yeah.
sci-fi, thriller, mystery, that kind of thing. So your niche will find you, and
Yeah.
so once you find it, lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
Go with it. Know what your strengths are. Know what you bring to the table. Always know what you bring to the table. So yeah.
That's a great tip too, because I do think when people are starting on anything, any career they want to go, they're just like, I just put everything out there, cast a wide net. And that's like, to your point, when you're in a drought, try something new, cast that wide net. But yes, really dig into that niche because then you become the voice
Mm-hmm.
in that niche. So that sounds really good. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you have been sharing so many great things. So I really want to go back to all the things you talked about, not just with your time investment for learning, but the actual, investments that you made for coaching, for equipment, for building your booth. And I know from your story that you have continued to upgrade your equipment and your booth along the way. So if somebody is just starting out and they're saying, okay, I want to do this to make money, and it sounds like I'm going to have to spend a lot of money. What would be the one thing that you would recommend that somebody should invest in first? Would it be the coaching or the equipment?
Oh man, that is an interesting question. I think you should. Coaching is unbelievably important. Um, but with that being said, you're not going to be able to utilize what you've learned in coaching without the equipment. But like I said, I jumped in feet first. Ignorance is bliss. There are times when you might want to meet with a coach first because that coach will tell you flat out, because there's a lot of great honesty in this industry, whether or not you're ready.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Whether or not you're ready. Um, I'm not gonna lie, there's some of those first books that I listened to. I've listened to clips and I cringe. I'm like, oh dear God, Lisa, what were you doing? And most narrators that I admire, that have been my mentors, say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They're like, I can't wait for the 7 years to be up, so it's taken off of Audible because it stays on Audible for 7 years. It's like I can't wait for that book to be gone because it's just so bad. I don't know how I got paid for that. I don't know how I did that book, kind of a thing. And because you're always better. Um, so I think for me, I would have, I think it would have been smarter. It would have been smarter for me to have gone in with coaching first
Okay.
and then telling me if I'm ready. And I have a really, really good friend of mine. She was smart enough, that's what she did. At the same time, she was building her studio.
Yeah.
Um, and so we were fortunate enough that we just had to. I started recording in the closet, and that we bought some more dampening, the big dampening blankets, and we bought because they make them, the sound dampening blankets, and the right stands and everything. We set me up in the corner of my closet, and but I had to make sure and through the coaches, through my stuff with Don Barnes, helped me figure out that my levels were correct. Because you can't, if you submit a book to if you get a book through ACX and you submit your audio, they will send it back to you if it doesn't meet their
Hmm.
specs, their specifications. And I knew that uh, after the fact because your audio got sent back from your audiobook because we had no idea. Again, it was like
Trial
I
and
said,
error.
trial and error. What I did was stupid. Shouldn't have done that, and it took so many hours. But
Yeah, I remember by the time my book was finished, you had already booked other books. Like you were already like moving on.
yeah,
And I was like, okay, cool. Like as long as I get it eventually.
I know. We kept upgrading. So then we made sure that so the next thing I upgraded was my microphone and my mixer, and then the next thing you knew, we built our first rendition of this studio. Like I was telling you earlier, um, a this studio that I'm sitting in, it is the smallest version of what would be a combination of a whisper room and a studio brick studio. I am fortunate that my husband can build. He got the blueprints for both studios, and what normally would cost about $3,000, we did for less than $800.
Hmm.
Very fortunate if you know someone, and I know a lot of narrators. That's their story. Their husband built their studios for them, and that's amazing. Or they built their own studios, and so that's what we're sitting in. And we actually just upgraded it again. We reinforced the flooring, um, because we live a few miles over from an airport that decided to expand and got military contracts and started an aeronautical school, and also got a contract with FedEx and Amazon. It gets loud. It's very, very loud. So we raised up the floor, put some more padding in the floor, and then a bought some different software and stuff to make it more to so I could get that noise out, because
Yeah.
even the best home studios, there are certain things that you cannot filter out, and
Yeah.
you will die trying to get it out. And so I booked more sessions with Don Barnes to help me. So this last year I had a session with Don Barnes to help me figure out what we needed to do to filter out that noise and that kind of noise. Unless you're in like a huge recording studio with the big wigs in like New York or LA, no, there's not going to be a single sound booth that can get out absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And especially in Florida with the thunderstorms, um, or if you live near a jet field, or there's always going to be things that are fighting
Yes.
against you as a home narrator, and
Yes.
it won't be able to get out absolutely everything. But the goal is to get out as much as you possibly can, and then fake the rest of it with your software. So
Yes.
that's the important thing right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
So this is my oh god, it's funny. We're still in the closet, but what we did was we decided to build the studio inside the closet, so it's in the corner of the closet. So my husband, being the wonderful, wonderful man that he is, it just happened to be on his side of the closet, and so we put in like shelving and racks from floor to ceiling instead of going across. So his clothes now go floor to ceiling when you walk in, and then the very back of the closet you see the studio.
I mean,
And
he took one for the team, right?
he did. He
Yeah.
so did. He took one for the team. He was so great. So we decided, you know what? The room's already soundproof to begin with. We'd be stupid not to build the studio in here.
Yeah. There you
So
go.
we did. It's
There you
very
go.
hot though. Every narrator will tell you you sweat for your craft.
Yeah.
You do, because you can't have air conditioning running. Because this thing will pick up your eye blinks if you blink too loud. If you get close enough, it'll pick up your heartbeat. It'll pick. You have to, tell you to figure out how to stand just so from it, and
Yeah.
mouth noise, all that fun stuff. So,
Yeah. Oh, the mouth noise, the smackies.
which is why software is so important. If any Isotope has the RX programs, and RX8 is the latest one. I have RX8, and they came out with this software and in the RX6 and it was a game changer. It's called it's mouth denoise and mouth declick. I prefer the mouth to click. It was created so that when you record sound from a old school vinyl record, it gets rid of that crisp that those crispy
Yeah.
noise that happens, those like Rice Krispies when you're pouring. And they found out that it worked for mouth noise,
There you go.
so that we narrators can. Now, you still want to learn as much as you possibly can to get rid of mouth noise. For me, some people are like, I eat an apple before I go in the studio. You know, these lozenges work. For me, it is warm room temperature water, no ice, nothing. And it was a tip that I actually picked up from one of my all-time favorite narrators, Amy Rubinate. Um, she's amazing. She's the head of Mosaic Audio now. So for me, it's warm water. Like I said, some people it's tea. Some people it's lozenges. For me, it's as little as possible. It is water, and don't ever learn this the hard way because I record in the morning. Don't ever brush your teeth right before you go in the studio. You'll just create more mouth noise.
That's really
The
good.
foam
That's
from the
really good.
toothpaste. Don't ever do that.
Awesome.
At least for me, it doesn't work too well. So you want to make sure you brushed your teeth hours before you go in the studio.
Awesome. Very good tip. Very good tip.
Yes.
Well, I definitely want to be respectful of your time. We're getting close to the end of the hour here. So I kind of want to close out with some final two questions. The first
Mhm.
being, if somebody's watching this and they want to reach out to you with questions about how to be a narrator, or they're an author and they listen and they said, my God, I must have her voice. How can somebody find you online to reach out to you?
Okay, so with me, it's my name. I bought one of the things I got from my business coach right away is buy your domain name. If it is available, I had to wait. LisaNegron.com was not available my first year. So I
Okay.
came up with Lisa Negron Narrates.
Mhm.
There's a lot of if you start looking at narrator pages, you're gonna see, there's some people that are voice of their name or
Mhm.
their name narrates or their name audiobooks. Um, but if you want to branch out into other things, like I also do voiceover work and theater. So I wanted it to be Lisa Negron, but I had to wait for it. I kept searching every year to see. When it finally became available, I bought it. And they said one of the best first investments you can make in yourself, other than your booth, is buying your domain name. So yeah, so you go to my website, lisanegron.com, and from there it'll link you to my Audible pages, how to email me, my social media, all that fun stuff. You treat yourself like a business, so you have to promote yourself.
All right, well, anybody, if you do want to reach out and work with Lisa, lisanegron.com. And my question that I plan to ask everybody I interview, although you're the first interview, so the first person getting this question is, what is your biggest ambition?
Oh man, that is a that's a I didn't think that'd be a tough question. Honestly, my biggest ambition, it's something simple. It's something that I wanted to do from the beginning of pursuing theater and performance. My biggest ambition is always just to be a consistent working actor. And I have been blessed with the fact that I've since graduating college, I have been a paid actor, whether it was theme park or theater or now audiobooks or voiceovers. And I never wanted to be like, oh, I'm going to be a huge star. I'm going to do this. I just wanted to be able to keep honing my craft, keep learning, so I guess my biggest ambition would be to work consistently and be the best at my craft that I can possibly be and keep learning. Um, yeah, I think that's it.
Sounds like you're
Now,
living the dream.
would it be a huge perk to start winning like the Grammys and the Audis and all that kind of stuff? Yeah. I'm still hoping for the day that Audiophile magazine, writes a review about me. That's one of my it's one of my goals. Hopefully it'll be a good review. Um but that's my biggest ambition is to just keep working.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Lisa. If anybody has any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I will answer them. I will relay them to Lisa, or she will be able to comment as well. And thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day. All right. So that was an amazing interview. Thank you so much to Lisa for giving your time and your talent to this channel. I really hope you all enjoyed that. And of course, any questions, please post them below right after we finish the interview. Lisa and I were still continuing to talk, going back and forth, and she was saying there's still so much we didn't even scratch the surface on that I had a list of to try and get to, about fair pay for narrators, Audiblegate, what to do, what not to do as you're getting a book, as you're going through the process, working with authors. There's so many things that I know you guys are going to have questions on. So hopefully we'll have her back. So for those of you who watched the interview and were really excited to learn about how you can start your career as an audiobook narrator, some of the key takeaways from this conversation with Lisa were all about investing, and not just investing money, but investing time and learning. So Lisa, who has been acting for decades, had to reinvest and relearn how to act and how to project her voice for audiobooks. So definitely take the time to do your research, to network, to meet people, to work with coaches, to get the right equipment. That was one of the big takeaways that I took from what Lisa had to share, was investing in knowledge, investing in the right equipment, investing your time. If you really want to make this your full-time job or a new career, you really need to treat it that way, not just as a whatever. One interesting thing she did say is that your genre maybe isn't something that you pick. Maybe it's something that finds you. So like she said, she loves reading YA books, but she's only narrated 2 out of the 40 some odd books that she's actually done professionally. She's really big into doing sci-fi and nonfiction books. Who would have thought? Certainly she didn't, but really trying to own your niche and find that niche. She also said to make the best use of that downtime. So inevitably there's downtime. And instead of just checking out and saying, woe is me, she used that time to learn, to try new things. So definitely keep that in mind as well. One of the other really big takeaways that I took from Lisa was just that give it a shot experience. She says she wishes she hadn't just dove right in, that she had had the coaching first. But it seems like, she really just had that tenacity to learn and to be open to learning, sharing that experience where somebody says, maybe you should take a few more of these classes, after she had been acting for 2 decades. Like, she clearly knew what she was doing in that arena, but in a very similar arena, she's voice acting, but it was very different for audiobooks. So be open to learning, be open to trying new things, and getting that coaching, whether it is from a professional coach or maybe one of your peers in this new industry. I have links to everything that Lisa referenced below, so don't forget to check those out. And if there's anything that you didn't catch, check the notes below for any of the coaches she mentioned. Any of the products and software she mentioned are also linked below. Whatever other questions you have, please leave them in the comments below. I'll try to get an answer to you as quickly as I can from Lisa directly, or from myself through Lisa. So I really hope that you enjoyed this. Please do not forget to hit like and subscribe. That lets you to know that you're getting value from this information and can get it in front of other authors and potential narrators like us. And I want to give a big shout out. So as Lisa was saying, she is working with coaches. She's working with other people in the industry to constantly learn and grow. And that's what I've been trying to do as well, to make not only my books better, the craft of my books better, but what I'm bringing to you on this channel. I'll be the first to tell you, and I've said in several videos, video is not my medium. Audio is not my medium, but I'm doing everything I can to learn and be better for you all. And so I really appreciate it when you do support this channel by liking, subscribing, clicking on the links, things like that. And I want to give a big shout out to those of you who've taken the time to support me directly with my Buy Me a Coffee link. All the money that I generate from my supporters goes back into improving this channel. So I really want to give you a huge thank out to Jason, Teresa, and Dale L. Roberts. Thank you so much for your support. And if you would like to be part of that support and hear your name called out in one of my future videos, check out the link below. All right, well, now you can get back to writing or narrating your book, or maybe somebody else's. See you soon.
Oh, you think you know, but you have no idea.
Yeah. Which is, what is that MTV real life or something? Or True Life?
The diary of?
Yes. You think you know, but you have no idea.
You
Christina
have
Aguilera.
no idea.
It's like a very 90s reference to me.
I love it. I'm all about it.
Like that we're just aging ourselves.